Well, good evening, Alberta patriots and freedom fighters across Alberta. This is the last broadcast before the end of the year. And I have to say, after reading and studying and putting material together for tonight, um, it was depressing to go through the information and hope there. I hope that everybody read that from President Ronald Reagan. I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. And boy, is that not the predicament that we're in here in Alberta, with the government saying we're here to protect you in this, I want to say, traumatic year for so many Albertans in the situation that we're in. Um, got a bunch of pictures here tonight, but I have to confess at about 6:15, my producer called me on the phone and said, "Hey, where's the list that you're providing for me?" And I've just been reading and writing all day, and I've sent him a bunch of pictures. And anyways, hope that the things go off okay, and that David's able to put the different pictures up as we talk here this evening. And I think that, that the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 years. And this is the predicament that we're in. The government claims that it's here to save us, and it's not working well. David, if you want to put up the picture, well, what was number 2 on my list? I don't have my list in front of you. If you want to put up number 2, and yep, okay, it is never give up. I just can't help but thinking of Churchill in their darkest hours, and saying, never give up. And I got that picture. I'll leave it up there for a minute, David, and I'll just keep talking about it. I was down south in the Caribbean years ago, and I bought this T-shirt, and I used to wear it quite a bit. But this is the predicament that we're in Alberta. We have got a federal government that has a stranglehold on us, and we have a premier who seems to think there's nothing we can do about it. He's able to talk a little bit, but our stork here isn't able to, or whatever our bird is. I'm not sure what it is, but the fact of the matter is that we're in the fight for our life, and we have to speak up, stand up, and be motivated. And here, the bird, it's got to bite the arms off there if we're going to have any choice. But okay, Dave, do you want to take that one down? Appreciate it. But we're in a stranglehold, and looking back in 2020, and some of the big news before the shutdown are two of the most disheartening things that's happened to the Alberta oil and gas industry in decades. And I've spoke about this before, but on the 19th of February this year, the Canadian Energy Regulator gave the go-ahead for the TC Energy Nova Gas Transmission Limited expansion line here in Alberta that was going to create about 5,500 jobs. It was a $1.4 billion project, and there would have been a lot of domino effect in the industry, and some estimates up to $2 or $3 billion of other investments, and like I say, domino effect here in the industry had that been, what would I say, okay. But because of our federal government, and again, their new legislation saying that Cabinet has to give the final approval after the Canadian Energy Regulator, it got stymied. And again, that was supposed to have been ready, on the 19th of February. They gave the go-ahead with the Canadian Energy Regulator, but it went to Cabinet, and it was supposed to be, 90 days later announced. And on the 19th of May, during the pandemic, boy, was it ever critical that we had the positive news and some jobs, and it didn't get announced. And again, we waited another 150 days till the 19th of October before the Cabinet decided to say, yeah, we'll approve this project, but here's 5 new conditions that need to go on top of the ones that the Canadian Energy Regulator felt we needed to do, even though they had a higher bar and took upstream, downstream into consideration and everything else, and had given the go-ahead. And what did our Premier and our Energy Minister do on the 19th of October? They thanked the federal government for finally approving this. We'd missed the year's work on that. It was supposed to be completed by next April. and I doubt that they'll even start it by next April now. And say that we'll try and help TC Energy meet those new political conditions that you guys so thoughtfully came up with. That, by the way, the Canadian Energy Regulator denounced and says that no, they shouldn't be allowed, that it was not in the best interest of the project to go ahead with those questions. And so there we have it. First big project of the year that should have gone on. Our premier should have done what he promised, to protect or to get jobs, to build pipelines, and to stand up to Ottawa. Complete failure. But 4 days later, even a bigger disaster. On the 23rd of February, Teck announced that they are withdrawing their application after years and $1.5 billion of expenses on the Frontier mine here in Alberta. Now, David, you can throw up that picture of the Frontier mine. Sorry, and like I say, we don't have everything quite as smooth as it should be here, but that was a $20 billion project. They figured 7,000 jobs would be employed while they were building it, and 2,500 permanent jobs. And again, our premier, and I don't know, David, do you have that video that you can play his response as he blamed it and can put that up? But our premier just pointed the finger at Ottawa and said, you know, shame on you. We need to do better. But David, do you have that? And can you put up that video off of Global? There is a video at 104. I think you need to start it. I'm not getting any sound, David. I don't know if it's going out, but oh, yep. That you're right at the spot there. If it there is no, I couldn't hear any on my computer. Well, we'll oh, okay. Thanks, David. If you want to take that down. Okay, I don't know if the video, I couldn't hear anything. I don't know if you people can hear anything, so I'm going to double back on it. And again, the Calgary School of Economics said, you know, $1.5 billion had gone into this. There was a lot of very important jobs here in Alberta to building that mine. Those all evaporated that day. Chances of those people finding new employment are absolutely slim to none. And it was a $20 billion project. And what probably the most dismal part of that is that we see that, you know, after weeks of delay, are you kidding me? This Canadian Energy Regulator, to my memory, actually gave the okay for that in 2017, but political interference stepped in. They says, oh no, you need to get, you know, some more consultation and stuff. And just a few days before they withdrew, they actually had both the First Nations up there give their approval for this development, and everybody was excited, thinking that, you know, wow, this is going to go ahead. And then Teck pulled the plug. And it's just interesting that Wilkinson, the environment minister, was quite upset about the whole thing, didn't want it to go forward, and again stymied it. Again, that chokehold that I'm talking about, $20 billion project, 7,500 jobs. It's just unbelievable. And our premier just wants to pontificate and blame Ottawa because of the indecisions over the last few weeks, when what he should have been saying was, you know, if you don't give the go ahead, and again, when you're going into an important decision like this, and if you're part of a business in your board's meeting, you absolutely know beforehand what the decision is going to be made and how people are voting on that board. It's disastrous and catastrophic for a business that doesn't know where the voting is going to be and whether a project's given the go ahead when it's presented something on this scale. And I think that Teck was given the behind the scenes notice that, hey, we're not going to give approval on this. And so they said, whoa, we'll save face. Do not turn that down. We'll just withdraw. That's my personal opinion. But again, here we have environmental laws trumping our Resource Act, which we're supposed to be able to freely develop and work and produce. I want to say the most important thing that we export to the world, and the biggest benefit to human beings is the carbon fuels, and how that has raised the level of life expectation, quality of life around the world. And those people that are still struggling and having a tough time feeding themselves clean water and stuff, it's because they don't have easy access to propane, to natural gas, to oil, gas, all of those things, which actually is such a blessing to humanity. But yet we have these anti-human political leaders that want to destroy not only the economy but people's lives, and say we're all better off for it. And to me, it's just deplorable and disgusting that we have a prime minister and energy ministers that feel this way and want to shut down one of the best assets in the world for actually improving quality of life. But we're going to come back to this later on. I've got some other pictures that later on in the show that I will go to. But anyway, so going back to this fact of never giving up, and the fact that we need to stand up and fight for ourselves. And again, I get going off here and have too many thoughts in my mind, but the premier should have at that point talked behind the scenes and told Ottawa, if you shut this project down, there will not be another dime that comes out of Alberta that's going to go to Ottawa. We will set up our Alberta Revenue Agency tomorrow. We'll collect all the taxes. We'll keep them in trust. And we have zero trust for you and your interest, not only for Canada, but your just animosity and your vitriol attitude towards Alberta, our workers, our people, the jobs that were lost. I mean, just the hypocrisy. Just, I'm sorry, people. My skin is just boiling to think of the fact that the Trudeau government, Judy Wilson-Raybould got fired as the Attorney General because she wanted to follow the rule of law, and our Prime Minister stands up there proudly saying, "I will always protect jobs. Jobs are so critical," and stood there and didn't allow for our Stantec to be prosecuted like they were supposed to for 9,000 jobs. Are you kidding me, Prime Minister? You're disgusting, and you're an embarrassment to the world. You're just unbelievable to me, and to think that you represent Albertans is an absolute embarrassment. And for you to announce that, oh, we're back, and the money that you've blown trying to get on the UN Council, and we look at the UN Council and the disgusting regimes that are put on the Human Rights Commission. It's just unbelievable. And you want to be part of that? Well, we in Alberta don't. And it's just, like I say, I'm sorry. It just really upsets me to think about that and what they're doing out east here to Alberta. But I want to go back for a minute and talk about the law and the problems that we're having. And again, with the Attorney General being fired because she wouldn't step in and break the rule of law. But I saw on Twitter, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, a very profound picture. It was a picture of Anne Frank, and it says, "The law is no moral guide." And those who were protecting Anne Frank were breaking the law, while those who killed Anne Frank and millions of others were following the law. And again, that came back, and I saw that when that 21-year-old Ocean Weisblatt was arrested for playing, hockey on an open rink. Another picture that came up on that was the individual who was standing in line with his skis on at Nakiska and said, "So grateful I have skis on and not skates. I might be arrested and fined $1,000." And the hypocrisy of our own government and the intrusion on individual rights here in Alberta is just unacceptable for me. And it is just, I guess, giving me energy to fight harder and longer for Albertans, because they're going to choke us. They're going to strangle us. They want us to be a have-not province, and they're proud of it. And if we as Albertans don't stand up and start fighting, what are we going to tell our children and grandchildren? I don't know, David, do you have that picture of Ronald Reagan where he talks it only takes one generation to lose our freedoms? Could we put that up on the frame possibly? And I'm sorry to have them have to jump around so much, but it's just very applicable that you don't know just how tenuous it is for the freedoms that we have. And again, for a year ago to say that we would be in this position where we don't have freedom of assembly, we don't have freedom of speech, we don't have the freedom to go out and to work and to earn a livelihood. All of those things have been stripped away from us this year. But David, I can never hear you. I don't know if your mic's muted, but can you come up with that? Can you put that quote of Ronald Reagan where he talks about just one generation away from losing our freedoms? Not sure why our communication is broken down, and I wish that we were in the same there. Oh, I see he sent me a text and he says he doesn't have it. So, okay, we won't worry about it. And I think that I might just try and see if I've got it here on my phone and read it, because it is very profound. And again, something that I can see that I didn't send it to him. I've got it here. Yep. Okay. Well, I'll have to look at my pictures. Well, should I take a look, see if I can find it? And no, that's not going to be it either. So I think I'm going to have to cry uncle on this quote from President Reagan. But the fact of the matter is he said that freedom was fought with blood and guts by many, and it was handed off to us. And what's our job to fight and to maintain those freedoms, because it's so easily to lose. And as President Reagan says, it can be lost in one generation. And I don't want to be that generation that loses our freedoms. And because of that, I will be going to the Freedom Walk in Calgary this Saturday at 1 o'clock at City Hall. I'll be speaking there. And again, just referring to the law is not a moral guide. And if we lose our freedoms and if Albertans don't speak up, we're in trouble. So I encourage all of those out there that believe that freedom is worth fighting for. Please come to Calgary and be in the Freedom Walk, the Walk for Freedom, this Saturday at 1 o'clock. But anyways, moving on from that aspect. And I guess I want to show one other picture. I'm pretty sure I sent you the picture, David, when I was in Calgary for Remembrance Day there at the Peace Bridge. That Calgary really along Memorial Drive puts up some beautiful displays for Remembrance Day. And as I walked across and I went across the Freedom Bridge and went back and forth, it really, it's a sobering time when you go and you see all the crosses along Memorial Drive and again, I don't know that I can read it there, but it says, I think there, that grateful for the freedom of religion. And there were different pictures all over posted, for the freedom of speech and for the freedom of assembly and the freedom to live and to make a living. And all of those things that we are blessed that got passed on to us. But yet, what are we going to do? And again, so many of those freedoms have been stripped away here. But thank you, David, for that picture there. Then, COVID has really caused us a lot of grief, and is very controversial. And some people have told me that you shouldn't talk about it, that we should be waiting to see the outcome. But it's attacked so many of our freedoms, and the one that probably bothers me the most in the world today, and it's going to be with both COVID and with the climate changes that are happening and the climate issues, carbon tax and all of that, is the outright attack on the open discussion. And anybody who has a different view or thought or speech that goes against the government and the globalist narrative is just literally just, there's a vitriol attack on those individuals. And they're called all kinds of nasty names and everything else, when that freedom to speak is so critical. And the best that we have to protect us from I want to say, the false information, and the other thing is to actually allow that free debate to be carried on, and for people to see it for what it is. And it's bothered me from day one that our provincial government has failed to give us all of the information. To me, they only give out the information that they think will scare us into compliance, that will scare us and thinking that our only hope is for government, that government's here to save us. And it is just very upsetting to me. What we should be having every day, if they want to talk about deaths, talk about all the deaths in Alberta. If 11 died from COVID today, were there 20 other deaths? Were there 60 deaths? What were those deaths? Were they heart attacks? Were they people who didn't get in for cancer treatment that we thought were going to live 3 or 4 more months? But give us all of the information. When they say that they need to shut us down, show us the information that they're looking at, that they're calculating and figuring on to shut us down. And I challenge them. The reason why they don't is because they don't actually look at the scientific evidence. They talk about science, we're following the science, but they never give us the numbers. And it's not because they think that we're too dumb to understand. They know that we will, so they won't give us the number. That's my take on it. And it's upsetting that they continue to push out all of this, I want to call extreme information to scare us at the cost of compliance, that Albertans are fearful to go out. And I had one friend, who talked about their 8-year-old grandson and they were getting together with, and he was very nervous. Well, what happens if the police come? Like, are we going to lose our home? There's a whole new fear that's developing that we've put on the next generation. That again is it's truly shameful for me. And what can we do about it? Well, we have to stand up and speak out. We can't be silent, because if we're silent, we will lose this. And as it's shown throughout history, when you've lost your freedoms, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get them back for generations because of the compliance and the fear. And so we're very close and in that that situation. I'm disappointed I didn't give you that. Did I send you the picture on Give Me Liberty? And it talks about, give me liberty or give me death, unless there's a virus with a 99% recovery rate, in which case strip me of my freedoms, my job, my constitutional rights, and put me under house arrest. Is that who we are? Thank you, David. Is that who we are as Albertans, that give us liberty, but oh my goodness, if there's a COVID COVID virus out there that has this 99% survival rate, strip all of our liberties away? And again, like I say, this is controversial. There's lots of Albertans that feel that this is our only hope. And again, what I have to say to those that say that their lives are at risk, and if I go out, their lives are at risk, that they have the freedom to stay home. It would be far cheaper for us to be able to help those that really are fearful and to help those that really are vulnerable than to shut down our entire economy. And again, those who say that, well, we're going to overwhelm our healthcare system. Well, our healthcare system is going to overwhelm our economy, and it's going to collapse if we're not allowed to keep our economy going. And it's just a real problem. But the other thing that's frustrating in all of this, and again, as I'm reading through the different research today and looking up different papers and stuff, there's so many places in the world that are looking at treatments. They're not waiting for a vaccine. And there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence. And a couple of videos ago, I don't know if you can just put up that picture of Dr. Corey, David, when he was presenting to the US Senate Committee on COVID. But a very passionate individual who was working and seeing more people die every day than he cared to see. But he made his plea to the US Senate Committee to say, you've got to start trying and using these drugs that other places in the world are, with ivermectin, with erythromycin, with zinc. But ivermectin and hydrochloroquine being the two that he was really advocating, and showing them just dozens and dozens of study to show the effectiveness of those treatments. And yet we failed to do that. And it's interesting to me that it's in kind of in the G8, the most developed countries, where they won't allow the repurpose of these approved drugs for treating COVID. and it's Australia. And thank you. There's a picture there of Dr. Corey presenting to the U.S. Senate. But it's Australia, it's United States, it's Canada, it's England, France, Britain, Germany, and those areas that are viciously attacking doctors that want to prescribe these because they're reading the evidence, the science on it, and the tremendous success that places are having. It's interesting in India, Peru, there's different areas in Mexico where they're giving out these treatments that, it's costing them $2 or $3, the government per person. I can't even imagine. I'd love, again, to be honest with this, Premier, how much do every one of these tests cost? But they've just completely shut the discussion on treatment for COVID-19. They shut the discussion on what we can do to secure our health and those type of things that are going on. And we just can't have that freedom of speech, of assembly, of exchanging information out there. And yet it's pervasive, and our prime minister and our premier seem to be silent on that. And so again, that's really frustrating to me. But I don't know whether we want to switch at this point, but I have a picture of Prime Minister speaking, David, with Catherine McKenna in the background, and she puts up a tweet there. And I don't know if I can read it here, but this is just shocking to me. But if we take the same approach to the climate crisis as we are to the COVID-19 pandemic, urgency, science-based decision, working together across borders, and focusing on the planet we want for everyone, we will win the race against climate too. Are you kidding me? That they would compare that, the success that they think that they're having with COVID-19 by shutting down the economy, spending hundreds of billions of dollars federally, tens of $billions provincially, and for what? And thinking that they're caring for the people on the planet? What hypocrites they are. Like, are they really, do they really believe what they say, or are they just globalists that just are just begging for the great reset so they can be in a position of power, and authoritarians that tell us how to live our lives? Will they go off and party and enjoy the highfalutin life while the rest of us peasants are struggling to get food and to work and to enjoy family relations and things? It's just shocking to me that they would even have the gall to put out a tweet like that. I just, like I say, it's unbelievable. Um, I don't know how many of you remember 2006 and Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth and all of the rhetoric and the urgency there. And there were a lot of predictions for 2020. And the one website, David, can you put up that picture on that website for 2020 predictions? Don't know, maybe I didn't get that one to him either. I don't know if I can find it on my phone here. I've got so much stuff that is there. But I live down here in southern Alberta, and one of my favorite places to go, yeah, there we go. Can't really read it, but 10 alarmist things. One of my favorite places to go is to Waterton National Park, Waterton International Peace Park, which is part of Glacier National Park, it's down in the States. And I'll just read here a little bit. But by 2010, Glacier National Park erected signs that its signature glaciers would be gone by 2020. This year, the park rushed to change the signs as the glacier still existed. In truth, the U.S. Geological Survey warned the park back in 2017 that the forecast model no longer predicted the glacierless park in 2020. But a park spokesperson told CNN that the park didn't have enough money to change the signs. The park altered most prominent placards in 2019, but it's still waiting for budget authorization to update the other two signs. The new signs will say, when they will completely disappear depends on how and when we act. One thing is consistent: the glaciers in the park are shrinking. Climate alarmists have been forecasting dooms for more than 50 years, and their predictions fail again and again. And I just can't help and talk about this for a little bit. Joni had a daughter that moved to Alaska, and we've had the privilege of driving up there twice and visiting her. And but before that, we actually took a cruise from Vancouver up to Ketchikan and up through there. And it was just, it's so beautiful and pristine and beautiful. It's just a real experience. But I can't remember which bay we were going into, but when we got in there, they had a big picture and they showed where the glacier was in 1880, and it was out into the ocean. I would say, I don't know, 500-600 yards, and you couldn't even get into the bay where we were at. And it just showed how it was retreating from 1880 up to 1970 and on. And I mean, for these so-called genius scientists on climate to say that, oh, all of a sudden things are accelerating here. I use the example, and I used to have a little ice business, and I sold block ice and cube ice. And the blocks that I sold were 3 inches by 8 inches by 12 inches, and they were solid blocks of ice. And it was amazing if you put that into your ice chest, how long that would last versus cubed ice or shredded ice. And it would last up to 5 days in an ice chest that normally normal ice would be gone in a day. But it always amazed me as you watched it shrink, as it started to get smaller and smaller, how it accelerated at the end. And here in Alberta, the glaciers were a mile thick here in southern Alberta 10,000 years ago. And for some know-it-all scientists to pontificate and say that, oh, the glaciers are going to disappear because of CO2 in the air, well, you need to look at the big pictures. And 10,000 years ago, we had a mile of ice on here, and that has been shrinking for 10,000 years. And now we're down to those last few glaciers in the mountains. And they want to say that, oh, all of a sudden that we are the cause of all of that and blaming humanity. As I said earlier, these individuals, they're against humanity. They want to see us removed from the earth. And it's disturbing. And I learned about this back, in 2008 or so when I was at a forum in Edmonton, where the Greenpeace were there and talking and wanting to shut down the oil sands there. And again, I'll talk about that in another episode, but that's when I realized that these people said, at that function there from Greenpeace, that man was not the most important animal on this earth, and that we needed to make room for others. And I was gobsmacked, and I said to my colleague at that point, like, who do they want to put in charge then if we're not supposed to be here? But that's the mentality of many of these people. They're aristocrats. They think that they have a right to be here, but the rest of us are a scourge to this earth. And we need to realize that the Great Reset, that's their thinking. They want to reduce the population by 50% or 75% in the world. They want us to not own any property. They want to control us. And again, with Catherine McKenna, with that tweet saying we need to do and work on climate the same way that we work on COVID is very alarming and disturbing to me. But I don't know, David, do we have any questions coming in? And if people wanted to ask some year-end questions, I guess maybe I need to turn that on. Let's see here. I'm going to go to the comments, and I don't know, David, if you if we're going along and people have some questions here. And yeah, I see that there's certainly a few here. California just said lockdowns are indefinite because of super COVID. Okay, well, I'm going to go with that one first because we've been talking on COVID, and then we'll do yours, David, if you want to put that up there. But this is the other thing that we've really learned from COVID is the fact that we're not prepared for a pandemic. There's been lots of planning, and I don't know if any of you listened to Lieutenant Colonel David Redman, who used to be the emergency preparedness person here in Alberta and brought forward different plans. But the fact of the matter is our healthcare system has been running on overtime for years. They haven't addressed the issue that we don't have the capacity that we need, and we certainly do not have the capacity for a pandemic. And there's things that you can and should do to prepare for them. And again, having these field tents, they're $1.5 million a tent. I mean, if they were really concerned that we're going to get overrun, and maybe the people weren't there, but for $5 or $7 million a tent, supposedly you could hire the Army, the Red Cross, Canada blood donors clinic, what's the name of them? But anyways, there were options that one could put in place if you really believed that we're going to be overrun, rather than shut down the hospitals. And again, we could have isolated those people that were showing up with COVID, and not left them in senior care facilities and whatnot. Even the senior care facilities that I'm against the lockdown, as each of you know, but I do understand the precariousness of senior care facilities, and what happens with COVID gets in there. But even at that, they could allow families to take their loved ones home and care for them there, for those that wanted to be able to associate with them. My mother has gone down. It's just terrible to see how she's degenerating in the last 10, 11 months. It's just sad that we can't get in to see her very often. The caregivers are run off their feet. But it isn't life when you're locked up in a prison. And one of the crueler things that they do, in prisons, is to put you into solitary confinement. And that's basically what we've done to many of these seniors. And I understand that there's a problem where, it's got into these facilities, and you've lost dozens of people in there. But I think that there is a way, like I say, whether to let people go home and to pay them what they're paying the facilities to care for them at home, and they could bring in care to be there for those who could. But to me, there was different options, but they weren't there. And the real question is, though, with this new variant that's come up from Britain, and now it's here in Canada, what's going to happen if we actually do have a pandemic? We're not able to cope with it. And again, I just believe that those people that can and need to isolate themselves, they can. But others that are going out and making a living and working, running a small business, whether it's a hair salon, whether it's a gym, whether churches, let those people that are willing to risk their lives, as the government would say, to do that. And those who want to protect themselves through isolation are free to do that. But you're not free to tell others that you can't go out, that you can't do business, that you can't talk about these things. You can't challenge the government's narrative. If you do, we're going to fine you. We're going to shut you down. We're going to take you off of Twitter or Facebook. All of those things are backwards and draconian and not serving the best interest of the people. And our Constitution very much says that it has to be demonstrably justified to abrogate any of our fundamental freedoms. And to me, it hasn't been justified. It's wrong. And I'm grateful for the JCC, and they're fighting in court and whatnot. And I hope that they're eventually successful on this. But it's just a bad situation. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know where government's going to go unless their whole goal is to destroy our economy so that they can bring forward the Great Reset. Is the only thing that makes sense to me. But appreciate the question. So David, if you want to throw up that next one. Paul, is a referendum on equalization in 2021, Albertans are voting to stop equalization or just give the opportunity UCP to renegotiate delay tactics? Thank you. The one thing that Jason says that is true is that if a province votes on something that they're against, then it needs to come up at a first minister's meeting and it has to be discussed. But okay, it's a forced discussion, but it's not a forced result. There's not a force saying that, oh, Albertans upset with equalization, so therefore we need to change it. And I don't even know that it's a delay tactic. It's just a puffball. It's a hot air balloon that's going to pop. There's nothing there. And so what? I mean, Ottawa already knows that we don't like equalization, that it's not to Alberta workers or seniors or pensioners' advantage, that it's to our disadvantage. And so I don't know why Jason understands the Constitution and all of those things, and yes, he brings up a valid point that they'll have to address it, but they don't have to change or say yes to anything that we have. And what's far more important to be voting on in a referendum is that we have the right for citizens initiative referendums, that we have the right for recall, that we force government to balance its budgets. Those are things that they need to actually vote on in a referendum, and to add some strength to Alberta, and how we deal with that. But is there another question, David, that you want to throw up on what we've talked about so far tonight? If our healthcare system can't handle 800 or 900 people in the hospitals, then we have a bigger problem. And that nothing could be closer to the truth than that. To think that 800 or 900 people with COVID is at the brink of collapsing our healthcare system, it is truly, truly disappointing to think of the. I should know what the budget is, but I don't know if it's 25 billion dollars a year that we spend on healthcare. Maybe it's only 15 billion. I can't remember now, but we're in a world of trouble if 900 people constitute a crisis in our healthcare system. And it shows the need for changing the healthcare. And I talk about it all the time, but this global funding to a regional hospital is wrong. They see every person who comes in that door as an expense rather than as what would I say, a customer. And it needs to change. Creating a super board was wrong. There's no reason that the only thing that made sense on that is that we could have used the combined force of all of Alberta hospitals and doctors to buy pharmaceutical drugs from a one-stop shop. Made sense. But all the rest, anytime you centralize anything, whether it is the government, whether it's healthcare, whatever service it is, it actually puts a stop to innovation. And we're not able to move forward because central government is such a skeptic, and they think they've got all the answers when in fact new innovative processes come forward. They're not allowed to be implemented, let alone tried in many of these areas. And we need to go back to, I don't know, 5 or 7 regional hospitals, and then we need to pay them for the services they provide. And again, if we really want to be prepared for a pandemic, then we need to look at field tents and the equipment and have it sitting in there. It's interesting, one of the articles I read a couple of months back was the fact that Ottawa sold a lot of the personal protective equipment because it was being stored in warehouses, and that's where the government thought they could save some money. Gosh, we've never used this equipment. It's there for an emergency. We don't see an emergency coming, so hey, let's sell all of this and get rid of these warehouses to save us some money. And again, one of the actual aspects of government is responsibilities, and again, thrown out the window and unprepared. Are there some other questions, David? Your thoughts on the U.S. election and how does it impact Albertans? Excellent question. And I think earlier today at 10 o'clock this morning, I put on a short video, and someone talked about the free trade with the U.S. that I didn't get answered. But it's interesting, with the new trade agreement that we've put in place now, and I can't remember the acronym, but the Canada, Mexico, U.S. trade deal. All of the arguments and trading that's going on is protecting industry in Quebec or Ontario. And as a sovereign and free nation, we don't need to put up any protection walls. We're more than willing to compete with the world. And I just see a great opportunity as a sovereign Alberta to be able to negotiate trade deals with other countries. And all that we would be worrying about is areas that are subsidized. And whether it's subsidized out of China and those areas that we can put up those conditions, but we're more than capable of competing on a world scale on anything that we're producing here in Alberta. And so we actually can advocate and create fair deals. We don't need to worry about the dairy industry in Quebec. We don't need to worry about the auto industry or the aluminum industry. We're willing to compete, but the outcome for me in the US, and again, it's interesting where things are, the process that they're going through, and again, they're very divided down there, but whether or not you're going to have enough individuals speak up when the collegiate vote is counted. I guess there's a strong possibility that if they reject that Trump will be able to remain in there. And I think it's going to make a huge difference if we end up seeing a Biden get in there. He's vowed to shut down the Keystone XL. He's like Trudeau, that he wants to destroy the world's economy. They want to put on the pretense that we can have wind and solar power to run our electricity and things. I see that New York, they just put in a 400 megawatt battery backup system, well, I guess functioning system, so that they can meet their goal on carbon emissions. But I wonder, they make us do upstream and downstream adjustments for our oil and gas. I don't think those people have a clue at how much mining takes place in order to build these batteries. I don't think they even understand how much energy is consumed just running the equipment, let alone the earth that is moved, and the amount of tons of dirt that has to be moved to find 1 pound of rare earth metals in order to make the magnets, in order to build the electronics that they need for these windmills and everything else. And again, it's interesting that they want us to do a full scope analysis, but yet they're not concerned about how a windmill's made or how many tons of concrete goes into the base to hold it there, how many tons of dirt was moved in order to find the iron to build the steel. And they don't, they're just hypocrites on all of these aspects. And so I don't know where we're going to end up on this, but it's very scary to me to think where Biden will want to take us with the new Green Deal, with the Great Reset. Again, we know that both Biden and Trudeau have a great love and affinity for China. I think it's because of their own personal benefits that they get from that, but yet they're both stooges, and China will just push them aside when they get what they want. It's very alarming to me that we have the Chinese army here in Canada doing exercises. They should be removed immediately. But I don't see a future for Canada and Alberta in Canada if Biden wins. And sorry for the long discussion on that, but that really is the elephant in the room. What's going to happen in the US is going to have a major effect here in Alberta, and we're going to have to stand up for ourselves. We can't let them choke us and put a stranglehold on us. It's the old never give up. We need to come together and stand up for ourselves, and I think we'll have a future. But any other questions, David? What percentage does the size of government need to be reduced? Well, I would think 50% would be a good start. I had to chuckle at one of the fundraising letters that the UCP put out there, is that they bragged that they reduced the what was it? How'd they say that? But the red tape by 6%. And I can't believe I've forgotten the amount of dollars that they figured that they'd save. But this red tape reduction, maybe Murray, what you're saying there is that it should be not the red tape reduction, it should be the bureaucratic reduction that we need to reduce. We just need to do a cost benefit analysis and back up and ask the question, what is the role and the purpose of the Alberta government? What should they be doing? What should the federal government be doing? And again, it goes back to the two fundamental problems that I see in our Constitution. One, no accountability, and that we can't recall and fire them once they have a mandate. And the other one, that they don't have to balance their budgets, that they can just run deficits year after year, billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions. Canada now $1 trillion, the US $30 trillion. It's just a train wreck waiting to happen. And this morning we talked a little bit about that. David had a picture of a train wreck, but in the early days here, those that were fighting, and again, we should go back and talk about that for a minute, about the train wrecks. But it's a train wreck waiting to happen, and to think that the bridge isn't out is false, that we're going to go off that in a big way, and if we don't stop and turn around and reduce the size of government. And again, for me, the best way to uh, restrain the scope and size of government is in a new Alberta constitution. And in that constitution, to me, tax freedom day should be March 1st. But because of our debt, I would say, well, we're going to have to start off on March or April 1st. And I know that many people think that that's April Fool's Day, but that would be a 33% cumulative tax on any industry or individual. But if we're going to have a future, it isn't because the size and scope of government. It'll be because of the reduction of government and the retraction that's needed there because of the billions of dollars that we're spending on services that just they're not there. And if you go back 5 or 10 years, or back to 2005 when I was in the Alberta legislature for the first time, it's just mind-boggling. You know, we had many times that even the own PC government had backbenchers that brought in legislation that they wanted to restrict the growth of government to population plus inflation. And had we done that, you know, we wouldn't have been in this mess back in 2016 and 14. And those are things that need to be in a constitution that restricts the size of government. That this idea that there's no accountability and no limit is the destruction of our economy, our future, and our freedoms. And so we need to reduce the size of government. We need to have a discussion on that, and appreciate the question. Is there another question, David? Just ask David here because he doesn't seem to be able to. Oh, there he's sending it before I could ask the questions. We've answered all the questions. Well, I want to thank everybody for the support that they've been given to the party. This is truly overwhelming job that we have in front of us. The fight is real, and we need to stand together in order to do this. And so once again, I want to invite anybody who can come this weekend, 1 o'clock, to City Hall in Calgary to have a walk for freedom. There's no question in my mind that what has to happen is these decision makers who say that we're going to shut down things, or we're going to restrict business to 15%, and making these decisions, they have no economic consequences to them. Their wages are protected, their jobs are protected. And those are the wrong people to be making the decisions. Albertans should be able to make those personal decisions. Business people who own a business should be able to make those decisions. And my first comment, and I put out a tweet on this, and it was one of my more significant tweets, is that those who want to shut down businesses or restrict them to 15%, and all those that are in those decision-making systems, they should be shut down to 15% or zero if they want to shut down a business. And they can sit there, and they don't have the overhead and the expenses that these businesses do. But I'm sorry, they're out of touch, and they're not the people that should be making those decisions. And we need to gather together as Albertans and say no to these unlawful edicts that have been pronounced by our chief medical officer and our premier, and saying what has to be done and what should be done. It's wrong, it's unethical, it's immoral, and if we don't stand up for them, we're all going to really pay for this for a long time. As far as equalization, I've been saying this for a year now. Ottawa knows that we don't appreciate and that how much they benefit from equalization, and equalization will change. But that change will occur, number one, if Alberta doesn't separate and stand on its own, collect its own taxes, and stop sending money to Ottawa. And we'll become a have-not province, and much quicker than anybody would have ever predicted. When you look at the loss of the Teck mine, when you look at the loss of the Nova Gas expansion line, the billions of dollars that was going to be invested, the thousands and thousands of jobs that have been lost, we're on a doom dive. If you think of an airplane and how it spirals down and can't get out of a tailspin, that's what we're in right now. And if we don't recognize that and stand up now, it's going to be too late and much quicker than what I would have said a year ago. But the Great Reset is real. We have a prime minister who wants to be the first one to sign on and be the first post-sovereign nation in the world to sign on to the UN World Economic Forum global agenda. And if we don't get out, we're going to be sunk. And like I say, equalization will stop when we're a have-not province, and then they'll turn to us and say, sorry, you guys don't want equalization, and we'll respect that. There'll be no money coming to you. And that's when equalization will change if we don't get out of Canada, in my opinion. We have an opportunity here to come together. Many people don't like politics, and I understand that. I don't like politics. I don't like war. I don't like having to be in the hospital. But these are realities of life, and we need to come together. We need you to make the donations to build this party. When you think of the millions of dollars that the NDP and the UCP have gathered, we need to start building our war chest. These are the last 2 days of the year that you can donate. We ask you to please, if you believe in what we're trying to fight for here, please donate. You can make a donation, an e-transfer, very easy, to WIPA. There it is up there, e-transfer, WIPA, cfo@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, wildrose.party. And I know that many people just hate that idea, but us getting this message out, it depends on you helping to fund to get that message out there. We need a war chest. That we're not going to win this war without the ability to buy signs, to put up posters, to be able to put up lawn signs, to be able to put out brochures that we can hand out. We need our members to have nice brochures that explain how we put our house in order, and then let Albertans decide if they want to become a sovereign nation. And those 6 things that I talk about all the time, the number one thing we need to do is to create the Alberta Revenue Agency. For Jason to say we need to study that, are you kidding me? After the shutting down of the 2 biggest projects that we desperately needed this year, should have been a no-brainer. We need to collect all the taxes here. We can keep them in trust. We can send those forward to Ottawa that we believe in supporting the military and security, border security. Any of those federal programs that are important, we can fund. But all of the rest of it, they're just billions and billions of dollars that are wasted. And we're not in a position to waste any money right now. We're a hurting province. We need our own police force. We need our own Alberta pension plan that's fully funded. We need our own immigration policy. We need to have our own employment insurance, another one that we support the rest of Canadian unemployed with our insurance program. And if we don't put those things in order and get our house in order, we're going to be a very hurting province, and we're not going to be able to provide the services and education and healthcare that we so desperately need to provide to our children. But anyways, 2020, we can look back and we can complain and grumble about it, or we can learn from our mistakes and come together and realize that the way that we fix government is political. You need to find a political party that's providing the answers, that provide the freedoms and protection that we need as Albertans. But just want to thank each and every one of you that have been supporting us through this year. And if you've got questions, you've got comments, you've got ideas, please send them to us. contact@wildrose.party. Go to our website, wildrose.party. You can go to my website, paul@paulhinman.com. We're here for you, and together we'll be successful. But thanks a lot. Take care, and may God bless each and every one of us as we go into this new year, and that we'll aspire to goals that will secure our freedoms and our children's future. Thank you, and good night.